What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we're going to be going over players who have lost value after the draft. This is not a comprehensive list of every single player who was negatively impacted, but I wanted to go over the players who took really big hits, either due to something that happened, obviously, from a drafted player for that team, or in very few scenarios, players that were traded during the draft that I'm just going to lump into draft impact. So let's get things started off with the running back position, and we'll start with Antonio Gibson. Man, Antonio Gibson, he's had a rough go at it, like, these last few months, right? We had those, like, was it like 1 or 2 days where he was a featured running back, right? We see J.D. McKissic signs, what was it, like a 1 or 2 year deal, pretty low money deal with the Bills, and we're like, wow, we're gonna get Gibson as a featured back. And then McKissic's like, nah, I'm gonna actually go back. I'm gonna play with the now Commanders, right? And so we're like, oh, okay, well, I guess things are going to be how they were before. Then they go out and they draft running back, right? It wasn't like they went out and drafted Breece Hall. They didn't draft one of, like, the elite running backs. But still getting Brian Robinson where they did, they still invested relatively high draft capital at the position. And I think the thing is, like, even if you're like me, I actually think Brian Robinson's a little bit overrated, right? I don't think he's that big of a threat to, like, the early down role of Gibson. But it does not really matter, right? He's going to be used in some capacity. They really wanted to bring back McKissic. He'll be used in some capacity. And if we were already frustrated with Antonio Gibson before, well, guess how frustrated we're going to be now? And it's not like Carson Wentz is coming in here and saving the offense, right? They'll be better. They've got Jahan Dotson. They've got McLaurin. They've got Wentz. That's a little bit better than they had before. And now bringing in Brian Robinson, you know, he's another guy that's going to keep Antonio Gibson healthy, keep him fresh. Gibson will probably be relatively efficient. So the offense will be better, but the offense is not going to be elite, right? And it would need to be really good to make up for bringing him in, because now you've got third downs taken away, or at least a lot of third downs taken away, 2-minute drill taken away. You've got some early downs taken away. So this really hurts Gibson. He's going down in value. He's still someone we can draft, and it depends really where the community values him, right? I don't know. I don't know where the community is going to value him. I don't know where his ADP is going to be. But you had to figure before it wasn't really going to be sneaking into, at least this season, it probably wasn't going to be sneaking into, like, the second round. And so if before it was going to be a third round, maybe this puts him into the 4th to 5th round. Well, maybe that starts being a little bit of better value, but those are things we're going to see as the summer rolls on. Another player, Michael Carter, also had a pretty rough draft. I would say his was rougher, right? Gibson's still the lead back, but Michael Carter is not anymore. The Jets are very clearly trying to build this offense around Zach Wilson, giving him enough playmakers to where it's like, hey, if you fail with this, you're done, right? Like, there's no way if Zach Wilson goes out there next, like, 2 seasons and looks like he did as a rookie, that he's going to be around any longer. They are loading up this offense around him. I guess they figured they needed a running back upgrade, and so they traded into the second round after trying to trade into the first round to grab Breece Hall. Breece Hall is a phenomenal running back. He can be a 3-down running back. Anytime your team trades up, you know, tries to trade up in the first round, trades up into the second round to grab someone at your position, it's not good, right? Your value is going to tank. I think Carter is, at this point, he's just like a late round flyer. This is Breece Hall's backfield. I don't think Breece Hall is going to be like a 98% running back. I don't think those really exist much anymore. But he's going to get so much work that you're never going to be able to use Carter unless Breece Hall gets injured. Devin Singletary also gets hurt. You kind of like could see this playing out when they tried to get J.D. McKissic, right? Because that was going to be a huge hit. And that doesn't happen, right? And so you're like, oh, good, like, they didn't add someone, but they were trying to. I think that should have telegraphed, like, oh, they're going to do something in the draft. I personally did not think that there were rumors they were going to go early at running back. I didn't think that was going to happen just because they're a smart organization. They know they don't need to invest heavily at the position, but they went relatively early, but grabbed someone that I think fits them perfectly in James Cook. James Cook is not going to be a threat on early downs, right? That's not what he's going to do. He'll like mix in, right? But he's not going to be a threat to be like, oh, well, it looks like Devin Singletary doesn't get anything because now James Cook's a feature back, right? That is not going to happen. That's just not who he is. But he is phenomenal in the receiving game. He'll be used on 2-minute drills. And also think about the Buffalo Bills offense. This is not a ground and pound offense. This is not a team that's like, oh, we got to establish the run, right? They know better. And so there'll be plenty of times where it's like early downs. It's downs where you might run the ball, but for them, they know they're passing. They can just have James Cook out there as like basically a fifth receiver. That's going to happen a lot. And so you're just going to take the snaps that Singletary was getting, possibilities for receptions, and you're just hammering that down, also taking away some rushing upside, also taking away, maybe they like to use James Cook in the red zone. That hurts. And for a team that already, like, you need to be the feature back on Buffalo to have like a ton of value, right? And we're talking like Devin Singletary to end last season was like a running back one. I don't know have the exact stats, but he was consistently producing running back one numbers because he was being featured. But as soon as you slice that in half, that really hurts. And you want to be on the end with the receiving, right? You don't want to be on Singletary's end, which is the early downs. So definitely not good for him. Rashaad Penny also takes a massive hit. Seattle went out, they drafted Kenneth Walker. I believe it was the 9th pick in the second round, but it was early in the second round. When I was doing up the notes, I said that Breece Hall was the best running back in this class, but because he was more rounded, I thought that Kenneth Walker was the best, like, pure running back. If we're only looking at, like, pure runners, Kenneth Walker is better than Breece Hall. He's a fantastic running back. And that's what Seattle likes, right? Seattle doesn't pepper their running backs with targets. They just want you to be fantastic on the ground. That's what Kenneth Walker is. I think he relegates Rashaad Penny to a backup. I don't think it's going to be like, oh, now this is the Kenneth Walker show. I think they're going to split. But if I had to guess to close the season, I would say Kenneth Walker is commanding more in that backfield. Yes, you have Chris Carson there. But I think in general, like, we don't know Chris Carson's health. I don't know if he's going to be part of this team this season. But just thinking about this in general, you had Rashaad Penny as like, oh, he could be featured. He could have 20 touches a game in this offense. That is not going to happen anymore. He's going to split with Walker, and that's going to crater his value. Because again, receptions aren't going to be there, so he needs a ton of carries to be viable. Elijah Mitchell also gets hurt. 49ers drafted, I'm going to butcher this a bunch of times during the season, but it's I think it's Tyrion Davis Price. I think it's Tyrion, correct me if I'm wrong. Drafted him in the 3rd round. I still don't get why the 49ers do this. They're really good at not only like finding talent late, finding 6th and 7th round running backs that can end up being good, or undrafted running backs that end up being good, but also just like in general, they can just find relatively decent running backs, and their scheme is so good, their offense is so good that those guys can produce. And so I don't think they need to keep doing like the Trey Sermon, Tyrion Davis Price. Why do they keep needing to draft early guys? I don't know. But plus, you already have Mitchell. I think this says a lot, though, about what the 49ers want to do this season, and that's a positive for Mitchell. And it's like, we have Trey Lance, we have Mitchell, we're going to draft another running back early. We want to run to set up a very efficient, or at least as efficient as they can be with Trey Lance, very efficient passing game. To say, teams have no idea when we're passing. We're fantastic at running the ball, at read options, at RPOs. We will take our shots deep on play action. Well, that fits into the narrative that they just drafted, a running back in the 3rd round they really like, having already had Elijah Mitchell, who they also really, really like. So that's a positive for Mitchell, that they're going to run it a ton. It's just a negative in that, like, if Mitchell was going to be the featured running back in this offense, like he was like the second half of last season, he's incredible, right? That's a phenomenal role and a very, very valuable role as well. If that's not going to happen anymore, it's going to hurt his value. I think we need to see in camp, again, the 49ers kind of like play with us last season, having no idea who their favorite running backs were, having no idea that Ayuk was in like the doghouse for, I guess that was what, like the first month to month and a half of the season. We had no idea some of these things, so maybe we just can't get a grip on, or can't get grip's probably not the right word. Maybe the beat reporters for the 49ers are not as good as some of the other teams, but regardless, we're going to learn more about this expectation. I still think Mitchell's the lead guy, but since he's not the feature back anymore, that's going to hurt. Leonard Fournette also decreases in value. The Bucs decided to use a late 3rd round pick on Rashaad White, which makes it unlikely that Fournette is a feature back this season, right? Fournette, I believe, we don't have good data yet, but I believe he was kind of going in the 2nd round, because if you're going to be the featured running back on the Bucs, like he was, I don't want to say all of last season, but a good chunk of last season, that's running back 1, right? And you would take him in the 2nd round. They grab White. White is a really solid running back who's great in the receiving game. And I'm just putting something together that it's going to say White. I wonder what number he's going to take. If Brady's just like, hey, I need a 3rd down guy that's like James White, let's get Rashaad White. They're both going to say White. It's definitely not the actual reason, but just kind of something in my head. But anyways, he's fantastic in the receiving game, fantastic in pass protection. That's very, very important for a Tom Brady offense. We saw that with Ronald Jones. He would miss one block, and all of a sudden he's on the bench for like 4 weeks, right? So I think White is going to fit in really nicely with this offense on third downs, in 2-minute drills. When they're trailing occasionally and they just want to go, they're going to hurry up offense, that's going to be White, and that just crushes the value of Fournette, right? Who had basically half, I think it was like 49% of his production last season in fantasy, given the receiving game. Well, if you just slice off a good chunk of that, that obviously is going to hurt. It's going to hurt his weekly floor, his weekly ceiling, all that stuff. He's still a great running back. He's going to be the early down back. I don't think White is really threatening him there, but I mean, the receiving work is very valuable. I've seen a lot of people saying this is just another Keyshawn Vaughn, probably because they're both taken in the 3rd round. But White's faster. White has much more burst. He's much better in the receiving game. He's better in pass protection. I just think he's overall a better running back than Vaughn. I don't know. I really think people are just drawing the comparison because last year they took a rookie in the 3rd round and then Fournette did good. And they're like, oh, it's just going to happen again. But they're different players, right? So I think White is better than Vaughn. And I view him as a very real threat to Fournette's workload, again, especially on like passing downs. And it's a team that's like to throw the ball a lot. Another weird one is just the Patriots running backs in general, right? I have no idea what the Patriots are doing. They already have Damian Harris. They already have Ramondre Stevenson, and that's a fantastic duo. Then they spent a 4th-round pick on Pierre Strong, a 6th-round pick on Kevin Harris, and then they also took a backup quarterback in the 4th round. It just feels like they were spending a lot of their mid-round picks on like positions they already kind of had covered. I know you need a backup quarterback, but the 4th round's kind of early, especially when the guy you took in the 4th round felt like a reach at that point. And it just feels like yep, Pierre Strong. Like, I guess like in general, my thoughts on that is that like that's more forward thinking. I think for this season, it's still gotta be Harris and Stevenson, or they could do what they did last offseason. They brought in all these running backs and they're like, all right, let's just like trade our least favorite to a team that really needs a running back in camp. That could absolutely kind of be in their back of the mind. That's just like, hey, someone's going to get hurt. Multiple running backs are going to get hurt. If we like these guys, let's just trade the one we like the least, still go in with a really solid core, and we'll get some value there. I think their actual thought, what was more in their minds, is that they're probably not going to keep Harris after this season. And so they looked at Straw and they're like, this is a guy that we really, really like, really, really quick, really, really good speed, good playmaker. Of course, the wide receiver they drafted as well was like one of the fastest, if not the fastest in the draft class. So they were just trying to get speed on the team. And maybe they think they're just going to kind of slide. They're going to be like, hey, Damian Harris next year gone. Stevenson becomes Harris. We've got Pierre Strong becomes Stevenson, and we just kind of keep rotating like that. Like maybe they get some compensatory picks for losing Harris, but that's kind of my thought, at least. So I don't think Pierre Strong is coming in here being the one, being the two. I think it's still Harris and Stevenson, but it makes you wonder, right? If you were going to click draft on Harris right now without knowing anything, and then you see these picks come in, now you hesitate just a little bit, and you're like, wait, what are the Patriots doing, right? And if you don't know the answer to that question, maybe you're now a little bit more likely to be like, I'm not going to do Harris. I'm going to actually pick this other guy. So we'll find out in the summer. We'll see what they're kind of doing there. But yeah, it's interesting picks. Quarterback. First up, our boy Justin Fields. I saw a tweet from Scott Barrett that really summed it up nicely, I think. I said, since drafting Zach Wilson, the Jets have invested in that, right? They've been like, hey, we just drafted a rookie. Let's help him, right? That makes all the sense in the world. So since drafting Zach Wilson, the Jets have drafted 5 offensive playmakers in the first 5 rounds, that being Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Breece Hall, Jeremy Ruckert, I actually don't know on that one, and then Michael Carter, right? Compare that to the Bears, who draft Fields, and then they only draft 1 playmaker in the first 5 rounds, Velus Jones Jr., who's going to be 25 in like a few days. I think it's like 10 days from me recording it, 9 days when you guys are watching this. He's already going to be 25. And I don't even really like him as a prospect in general. And I believe that tweet was sent out after day 2. So that was after like day 1 is round 1, day 2 is rounds 2 and 3. The Bears had 8 picks after that, and they drafted 0 wide receivers and 0 tight ends. They're not helping him, right? You would think they had a ton of picks. They had some early picks. Even in the mid-round, there's still good receivers on the board, and they just refuse. And then the one that they draft isn't even that great of a prospect. Now, I know there's some free agents out there, but it really feels like the Bears took Fields. Now they don't like him, and they're like, hey, let's just give him no help. He'll fail, and then we'll start over in the future. Like, I have no idea what the Bears are doing. Makes 0 sense. But if you wanted to draft Fields this season, you needed them to do more. You needed them to at least try to help him. And they didn't. He has no one. I mean, he's got, Darnell Mooney, but you can't just have Mooney. You need more help beyond that. And they didn't help him. That's going to hurt. And so I'm not sure yet. Maybe we end up targeting him. Maybe they trade for someone. Maybe they sign some of these free agents, but there's no free agents they're going to bring in that I'm like, ooh, yay. Glad you didn't draft one of the million incredible wide receiver prospects from this draft class. Doesn't make much sense there. Next up, Ryan Tannehill for multiple fronts, right? Like if you're Tannehill, you're upset after this draft. I mean, not only did the Titans trade away A.J. Brown, I would say inarguably one of the 5 to 7 best receivers in the league. That's inarguable. I'd say it's probably inside of that. It's probably one of the best 3 to 5 receivers in the league. And they drafted Malik Willis. So they trade away his best weapon. Then they draft his replacement. Now, I'm not hating on the Titans for the Willis pick. I think that was incredible value. He should not have gone that late in the draft. I feel like that just makes sense for them to do. But if you're Tannehill and you want Tannehill in fantasy, like his weapons are Derrick Henry, great. But also for fantasy, he's going to hand the ball if I don't get any points for that, right? So that doesn't help you in fantasy. If you got Austin Hooper, neat. Treylon Burks, I love it. I love the pick, but I love Treylon Burks if you have A.J. Brown, right? I mean, obviously, Burks is going to be great in fantasy, but like if you're Ryan Tannehill, I want Burks and Brown. I don't want you to trade away Brown and hope that Burks becomes A.J. Brown in 3 years, right? Because he's even going to be on the team anymore after that, talking about Tannehill there. And I know they have Robert Woods, but he's like a 30-year-old wide receiver coming off a torn ACL. I don't know how effective he's going to be. And then you got Nick Westbrook. Is it like I don't even remember how to say his last name. It's like Ikine. I don't know, but he's not any good. So what is Tannehill in fantasy now? They're just going to run the ball 1 billion times per game and hope that they can do something in the passing attack? Like, this could be a bad offense. I trust this coaching staff is the weird thing. Like, I like this coaching staff. I think that they're going to get the best out of their players. That's like another reason why I'm excited about Treylon Burks. Not only just from his talent because of that standpoint, but for fantasy, man, this is bad for Tannehill. I'm also going to throw Lamar Jackson in here. I don't think that his value tanked. I know this video is on values who tanked, and some of these guys tanked in value. I don't think Lamar tanked in value, but I wanted to mention him because they didn't help him either. His weapons kind of got hurt. Of course, trading away Marquise Brown, they weren't using a lot of their early picks at wide receiver. I actually have to check this. I don't remember who they took after day 2, but I know that they didn't use early picks on receiver, right? And I don't really care if they add a receiver in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. That's not someone who's going to come in and be Marquise Brown. Now, Marquise Brown was frustrated for the past 2 seasons, I believe that came out. I hadn't heard that before. I don't think many people had, but there have been discussions and Marquise Brown was like, hey, this offense doesn't fit me. I want to be somewhere else. He wasn't vocal about it in the media, but I guess that was happening internally. So I get why they made the move. Also figuring that they can get something for him now because they're not paying him a ton. They probably weren't going to have him for his next contract, and so get rid of him now. But with how engaged they were in the running back market, again, how they didn't bring in high-end receiving talent. I think they also drafted multiple tight ends. It seems like they're just going to go back to run the ball a ton, which again is fine for Lamar, and he gets a ton of his value from rushing, which is totally fine. So again, his value didn't tank. But if you were looking at this as a season where maybe the running backs come back healthy, Lamar continues on the ground, and now he excels again or gets better as a passer. He's got Marquise Brown. He's got Bateman coming along. He's got Mark Andrews. Maybe they bring in another high-end receiving talent. But instead, they don't bring in that high-end receiving talent. They give away Marquise Brown. The upside passing doesn't seem to be there anymore. So he definitely takes a hit as well. Last position that we'll do, because I don't think anyone really changed. I mean, no one tanked in value at tight end position. There was no one that's going to come in and all of a sudden, be the next Gronk, right? So we'll just do wide receiver. We'll start things off with Juju. This is more of like an off-season take. But like every wide receiver with a pulse is just making bank right now. Started with Christian Kirk. Then the team goes out, they get MVS, 3 years, $30 million. It's not actually going to be that. They could pretty easily get rid of him after next year. So it could really be like a 1 year, $9 million deal. But like, regardless, MVS got a better deal than Juju. Okay. Then they go out and they draft Sky Moore, a wide receiver prospect I really, really like. And like, I know they had a gaping hole to fill with Tyreek Hill being traded away, but I don't see how you can look at this offense or this offseason and look at the draft and not come away thinking that like Juju missed out this offseason. He should have gotten more money. I know he's betting on himself and he's young enough where he was like, I'll take this year, bet on myself, do really well in this offense, and then get a bigger contract elsewhere. But I think he could have done that and still gotten a much better deal given the like dynamics of the wide receiver market if he just held out like a little bit longer, like not signed to a team so quickly. But then also like after they get him, bringing in MVS, bringing in Sky Moore, it hurts, right? So I don't think his value is just like non-existent anymore. I just think this is more of like an NFL take of like, Juju missed out. Like, you're upset if you're Juju right now. He should have gotten so much more. Chase Claypool also decreasing in value. Now, they did draft Pickett, who's going to be an upgrade over Trubisky. And, of course, they lost receiving talent in the offseason. So you can look at that and be like, oh, he's actually in a better spot. But Deontay's the clear number one, right? Then they went and they drafted Pickens. Oh, that's funny. They got Pickett and Pickens. They got Pickens in the second round, who I think has a ton of upside. I don't think he's a lock to be like fantastic, but let's be honest, given the track record of Steelers wide receivers, like they're so good at drafting receivers, he's probably has a lock to be good. But I think he's got a ton of upside. So they go and get him. They grab Calvin Austin in the late 4th round. Austin's not a player who's going to like, kick Claypool off the field, right? But he's a deep threat, right? He's a really, really good deep threat. And that's going to hurt Claypool. Because you have Deontay as that one. You've got Pickens commanding targets as well. And so you're just having the like maximum target share that Claypool can have is kind of decreased. Then you have someone who like Claypool got a ton of his value deep. Now maybe they're designing deep balls to Calvin Austin. Well, you're just like taking away little portions of Claypool's game. And what was it before? I mean, he played, what was it, like 31 regular season games and like 2 playoff games in his career, something like that. And he has 3 games over 100 receiving yards. Like he had that one monster game as a rookie. And he hasn't really done a whole lot after that. He's been like, fine. And then you consider, like, rookie quarterbacks don't typically have multiple high-end fantasy options. And if one player is going to be that on the team, it's Deontay. And so you keep looking at these things and you're like, is there a chance that Claypool's like on free agency? At like not like NFL free agency, on like fantasy free agency at some point in the season? Maybe. Because if they're not, like targets are going to Harris, they're going to Pickens, they're going, obviously, to Deontay. They're going to go to Calvin Austin. Like, how many targets is Kenny Pickett going to have? How good is he really going to be as a rookie? I don't know that Claypool is really going to be that valuable. So I think he really took a hit in the draft in this offseason. And DeVonta Smith, right? Wasn't technically, this is the one I was alluding to earlier, wasn't technically a draft pick, but as a result of the draft, we see the Titans trade away A.J. Brown to the Eagles, and then they give him a 4-year, $100 million deal. And despite how amazing I think DeVonta Smith is, an awesome prospect, going to have a great career, A.J. Brown is inarguably better. He's obviously a better receiver. No one's going to argue you on that. I think that it's pretty obvious that taking like a top 5 wide receiver and adding it to your team is going to hurt the value of DeVonta Smith, right? We knew they were going to add someone, but if it was literally any rookie, that's not going to hurt as much as taking an already established, phenomenal wide receiver in A.J. Brown and adding him to the team. So that hurts him. Also, given that the offense was very run-heavy to end last season, they had a lot of success doing that, and so you could think they might do that again. So tough news for DeVonta. But he's also, like I said, DeVonta Smith's a fantastic wide receiver, and now he's not going to see primary coverage, right? So no one, it's Quez Watkins. You're really scared of Quez Watkins. Like, that was the other receiving talent they had on the team. So now defenses are like, oh, shoot, we need to take away A.J. Brown. He's great. So now DeVonta Smith is not seeing top coverage. He's never being double teamed, right? He's not the primary read. But if he's open, and again, that was one of the best parts of his game, is creating separation. If he's going to create even more separation now, I still think he's going to be good. Just obviously, the target share can only be so high when you're playing with A.J. Brown. So those are a bunch of guys who lost value during the draft or in the draft process, like I said, with A.J. Brown. I will do the opposite of this video. I don't know when, probably on Friday. I think the current plan is Wednesday. I'm going to go over, I'm going to kind of look at who I think the top 10 players in fantasy are right now. I'll probably do full PPR scoring, but we'll see on that. Just kind of a fun look at who I think the top 10 is in order. Rankings aren't out yet, but I'll kind of look over that. And then I think on Friday, again, I'll do the opposite of this. What players really increase their value, either from their team drafting them a weapon or just not drafting anyone, and now they're clearly going to have a massive role in the offense when we thought that might not be the case. So you got those two videos to look forward to. Also, I have finished that positional draft strategy research guide, I guess, that I was talking about in the past. I had done the running back ones since I've been gone. I did wide receiver, quarterback, tight end. Gotten pretty good feedback on that, so please check that out on the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. It's just basically an in-depth breakdown on the optimal draft strategy at each position, just using data from hundreds of thousands of teams over the last 7 years. Really excited about that project. I think it came out really nicely, so make sure to check that out. Again, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting the like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.